One of the peculiarities of modern civilization is the importance it attaches to the idea of time. Time is considered a kind of linear progression measured by the clock and the calendar. The tendency is to regard this idea as a necessity of thought, but acquaintance with the beliefs of other civilizations shows that this is not the case. Cultures differ in their concepts of time. This is related to their values and expectations of their respective cultural group they relate to, grew up in, and are conditioned by. In this regard, there will be the obvious differences between various ethnic groups, social groups, regional groups, and even clans and families. Some families value abstract structures and schedules more than others. Some societies are highly structured. How things are done and how long it is expected for something to be accomplished depends on the overall context of the event, the group expectations, and how much value is put on time efficiency. All cultures have some concept of efficiency, but getting things done quickly is a value only in certain, usually mechanical, technological societies in task-oriented or production-oriented situations. Most models of cultural time usually imply a potential conflict between subjective and objective time, between an individual's own sense of time passing, called kairos by the ancient Greeks, and the external standardized time frames imposed on them by society, which is called chronos. Modern Western time has been described as the predominant form of monochronic. In this view, time is seen as something tangible, as well as linear. It is conceived as a ribbon or road stretching from the past into the future, which is divided into segments called minutes, hours, days, months, and years. Within this rigid linear structure, one can only do one thing at a time, as time itself flows swiftly past. Under the monochronic concept, time is measured by clocks and watches, and is a form of external order that originates outside the individual, in which it imposed upon the chaotic lives of humanity. Thus, time is organized, which is essential for the smooth functioning of a complex industrial society, in which the actions of large groups or people need to be coordinated so that the factories, shops, businesses, offices, railways, airlines, and traffic flow can all operate on the identical time schedule. Time in the Western world is often seen as a form of currency or commodity which can be spent, wasted, saved, or given. It can be free, spare, extra, or overtime. Time can be converted into money and money into time, hence the popular Western saying, time is money. Time and work are intimately related in cultural industrial structures. Time, labor, wages, and productivity are all linked into one with the original aim of greater productivity at a lower cost and in a shorter period of time. Monochronic time coexists with polychronic time, which is less linear and less tangible. Here, time is experienced as a point at which relationships, social interactions, or events converge, rather than a ribbon or a road. Polychronic people stress the involvement of people and the completion of tasks, transactions, or conversations only when the time is right, rather than by a strict schedule. This often involves doing many things at once with multiple tasks, responsibilities, and ties to other people. Life is experienced as constantly in flux and not as rigid as in clock time. It is common in many parts of non-Western worlds. In Zen Buddhism, for example, time springs from the self and is not imposed. Another reflection of such laid-back attitude towards time is seen in Indonesian culture, where they have the phrase jam karet that literally translates to rubber time, implying that time is flexible. Language influences time perception. For example, in Russian they have one generic word that describes both day and night. That word is sutki, day and night. There is a difference in the concept of time between American and Russian cultures. The night in English is not only the night, but also the evening, and it actually lasts until midnight. In comparison, the Russian night lasts until 4 o'clock in the morning. The American practice uses more discrete time units in comparison with the Russians. For example, an 18-month-old baby versus a 1.5-year-old baby. There are differences in both cultures concerning the ideas of different stages of one's lifetime. Americans use the term teenager to cover all the teen years, but Russians use 3 different words to represent the concept of a teenager. Podrostok represents age 13 to 16, Yunosha represents a young man, and Devushka represents a young female. Culture is essentially the collection of all the values, beliefs, concepts, and behaviors that you learned as a child and help shape the way you see the world. Cultural dimensions do not apply to all individuals within a culture. These are the exceptions to the rule. It should also be noted that cultural dimensions are interconnected. This means that to get a complete picture of any particular culture, you must take into account all the dimensions you observe together. Low context versus high context is one cultural dimension. It represents the way people communicate with each other. In high context cultures, information is either in the physical context or internalized in the person. Behavioral rules are implicit, and members tend to use a more indirect style of communication. In low context cultures, information is part of and conveyed through the verbal content of the communication. The rules and expectations are explained and discussed. Individuals tend to prefer a more direct communication style. How this dimension relates to time orientation is that those with low context cultures have a linear, more direct way of thinking, and because of this are monochronic individuals. This means that they prefer to complete one task at a time and value punctuality in keeping to schedules. Individuals with a high context culture, because of their preference towards indirectness, place less emphasis on time management and more on maintaining relationships. This does not mean that they do not get anything done. It only means that they place less of an emphasis on watching the clock. Time perception might depend on which age group one belongs to. A comparison between France, Germany, and Poland in 5 different age groups shows similarities and differences. The older generation have more free time and they tend to be better informed about daily life than younger people. Their perception of time switches to a past orientation, and there are little cultural differences between the countries. Compare that with the younger generation, aged 26 to 45, and you can start to see the differences between the 3 cultures. The French are very traditional and take care about the values that they learned when they were children. They are mostly past-oriented because they want to keep the family traditions. Germans are mostly present-oriented, focusing on their work life and time management, which becomes the most important aspect of life. They are extremely goal-oriented and do think in future terms. Polish people are very present-oriented, but because of their tumultuous history, they orient themselves in the future to be optimistic. They usually don't allow themselves to enjoy the present time until they have a satisfying job and an established family.